A black sphere disappears into the Pacific. A strange six-pointed shape is tracked over the Yellow Sea, and Air Force controllers scramble a fighter jet after watching lights dart around restricted airspace. These are declassified recordings the military could never explain. The Pentagon has released another batch of declassified UFO files, adding 41 new records to a collection that's now hundreds of files deep. Along with old government documents are videos recorded by military sensors, including one showing a strange object racing over the Middle East and another showing a black sphere hanging over the Pacific Ocean before it seems to disappear and then shows up again. Some of the older files are just as interesting. One looks at two pieces of film recorded in Montana and Utah back in the early 50s. After going over the footage, the Navy team studying it said the objects didn't behave like anything they could match to weather or aircraft they knew about at that time. They wanted a much bigger investigation but didn't have the funding or people to keep digging. Another group of documents comes from Project Sign, the Air Force's first attempt to figure out what people were seeing in the sky. It didn't brush every report aside as someone getting it wrong. In quite a few cases, they believe witnesses had really seen something. The problem was, nobody could say what it was. Some reports described objects moving at incredible speeds, making turns that military aircraft at the time simply weren't capable of. Eventually, a lot of those sightings were explained away. Some were weather balloons, others turned out to be bright planets or stars that looked unusual under the right conditions, but for a handful of reports, there were no explanations. One thing that stands out in the files is what officials wanted to tell the public. Instead of talking about the sightings they couldn't explain, they recommended focusing on the ones that they could. If people asked about flying saucers, the advice was to talk about balloons and misidentified objects in the night sky, not the cases that were still left unanswered. The newer recordings show the mystery hasn't gone away though. One infrared video from 2023 tracks a fast-moving object over the Middle East before it was sent to the Pentagon's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office for review. Another recorded over the Pacific Ocean shows a black sphere through a military infrared camera. According to the report, it briefly disappears before showing up again, and no clear explanation was given for what happened. Back in July 2019, the crew on the USS Omaha tracked a dark, round object flying around out over the Pacific near San Diego. The ship's infrared camera locked onto this 6-foot sphere as it moved across the water, and you can hear the sailors in the room trying to keep up with it as radar showed it hitting speeds between 74 and 254 kilometers an hour. One sailor shouts, "It took off! It's booking it!" right before the object slows down, hovers in place, and drops straight toward the ocean. A few seconds later, someone yells, "It splashed! It splashed!" when it goes under. And there's more. Radar picked up as many as 14 different objects buzzing around the ship over a span of a few nights. After the sphere went into the water, the Navy sent a submarine down to search the coordinates, but they didn't find a single scrap of wreckage. The Pentagon ended up confirming the video was taken by Navy personnel, leaving it as one of the clearest documented cases they've ever acknowledged. On August 15, 1950, Nick Mariana, the manager for a local baseball team in Great Falls, Montana, was hanging out at the stadium with his secretary, Virginia Ronick. Out of nowhere, they spotted two bright silver things spinning across the sky at maybe 200 to 400 miles an hour. Mariana ran to his car, grabbed his 16mm camera, and caught about 16 seconds of footage before they disappeared behind a grain elevator. The paper picked up the story, and pretty soon, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base sent an investigator to interview them. Mariana agreed to hand over his original film reel so they could analyze it. Two military jets had flown past the stadium right after the objects did, so the Air Force eventually came back and said Mariana just filmed the sun glinting off those jets. Case closed, right? Except when Mariana got his film back, he realized the whole opening portion was now gone. The part that showed the objects spinning up close. A few people who saw the tape before the Air Force got a hold of it agreed with him, saying those missing frames showed actual metallic discs turning in midair. The military claimed they only chopped out one single damaged frame, but Mariana maintained for the rest of his life that they cut out the best part of his video. This was one of the strangest recordings released in one of the recent Pentagon UAP drops, often referred to as the Yellow Sea Six-Pointed Star. Following description comes right from the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. The United States Indo-Pacific Command submitted a report of an unidentified anomalous phenomenon to the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, AARO, consisting of 18 seconds of video footage from an infrared sensor aboard a U.S. military platform in 2025. A sensor pans to track an area of contrast resembling a six-pointed star, keeping it generally centered with the center of the screen. In late December 1980, right outside RAF Woodbridge in the UK, a base used by the US Air Force at the time, security patrols spotted a strange light dropping straight into Rendlesham Forest. Thinking a plane had crashed, servicemen headed out into the woods and came across a small glowing metallic craft sitting on the forest floor. They said it had strange symbols etched into the hull, and after hovering briefly, it shot up through the trees and vanished. 2 nights later, the lights came back. The base deputy commander, Lieutenant Colonel Charles Halt, went out in the woods himself with a small team to investigate, bringing along a handheld microcassette recorder to document everything in real time. And as they moved through the trees, their radiation detectors started spiking. The men saw multiple beam-like lights coming down from the sky, with one beam dropping straight down right next to their feet. The military officially tried to write the whole thing off as light coming from a nearby lighthouse down the coast, but Halt and the airmen who were out in those woods swore until the day they died, the lighthouse did not shoot beams of light at their boots. This happened on October 7, 1965 at Edwards Air Force Base in the Mojave Desert, a United States Air Force flight testing site. At around 1:30 in the morning, air police stationed around the base spotted unusual lights in the night sky. Control tower operators looked up and confirmed it, describing up to a dozen objects shifting colors between white, red, and green. They were moving erratically, stopping dead in midair, and then taking off again right over the restricted airspace. Hours of live radio traffic were recorded as Sergeant Charles Sorrells and other tower controllers tracked the objects. They scrambled an F-106 jet fighter to intercept them. By the time the jet got up into the position, the lights had either moved off or faded out before the pilot could lock on. Project Blue Book looked into it and officially closed the case, saying the tower controllers were just looking at bright stars. But nobody really bought that explanation. These were tower operators at the military's top flight test facility, people trained to identify everything in the sky. On top of that, stars don't move erratically. The Air Force doesn't scramble supersonic jet fighters at 2 a.m. over twinkling stars.
Clear. 7, go ahead.
Bogey at 10 o'clock high.
This is Houston. Say again, 7.
So we have a bogey at 10 o'clock high.
A bogey at 10 o'clock high? That audio comes from NASA, also part of a recent Pentagon dump of UAP files. On December 5th, 1965, NASA astronauts Frank Borman and Jim Lovell were orbiting Earth aboard Gemini 7. Borman radioed down to Mission Control with that message you just heard. When Mission Control asked if he was just seeing their own booster rocket or some kind of natural phenomenon, Borman pushed back, saying, "We have debris up here, this is an actual sighting," end quote. He also added,
Gemini 7, is that the booster or is that an actual sighting?
So we have several, looks like debris up here, actual sighting.
You have any more information, estimated distance or size?
Mission Control double-checked to see if those particles were separate from the booster and the object Borman spotted. That's when Jim Lovell jumped on the comms, confirming he had eyes on their booster rocket on his side of the spacecraft. So whatever else was out there was something else entirely. Lovell then described what he was looking at. It's a brilliant body in the sun against a black background with trillions of particles on it. It's ahead of us at 2 o'clock, slowly tumbling, end quote. On July 17, 1957, a U.S. Air Force reconnaissance plane was flying over the southern United States when its crew started picking up something really odd. The aircraft had electronic warfare equipment designed to detect radar signals, and one of the operators noticed a signal that didn't seem to belong there. The crew could actually see a bright object outside the craft, while ground radar stations were also tracking something in roughly the same area. For more than an hour, the object seemed to follow their plane across several states. 6 Air Force officers were aboard the aircraft, and 3 of them were operating the electronic equipment. The signal was picked up by their receivers, while radar on the ground was also reporting the object, but at some point the object suddenly disappeared. The case was investigated, but there's never been a satisfying explanation. That's been the video. We'll catch you, yes you specifically, in the next one.